My name is Jason Stone. I am the VP of Sales and Marketing with Engage. I'm your host for today's webinar. Through this webinar series, we will host leading experts who will discuss and share insights on a variety of topics related to successful association administration and growth. Before we get started, and before I introduce our speaker, I'd like to go over just a few housekeeping items. One, to maintain a quiet environment, all attendees are in listen-only mode. We will have a Q&A session at the end of the event. Should you have a question, please use the question function in the GoToWebinar utility box on your screen to ask, and a recording of today's presentation will be sent to all attendees. At the end of the webinar, please take a minute to take our 5-question survey. Your feedback will help us to improve the quality of these events. And from the entries, we will draw one lucky winner for a $25 Visa gift card. One of the questions asked for ideas for future topics, so we'd really appreciate your thoughts to help us grow and guide the best practice series. All right. An association's website is a hub. It is both the central place to go for information and it is increasingly the anchor of all association communications. Therefore, it's vitally important for an association's success that their website meet the needs of both its visitors and its administrators. So today, our topic is importance of user experience in association website design. Our speaker is Danielle Cooley. Danielle is an independent UX consultant who has been helping companies and organizations for over 15 years, improving the user experience of a variety of systems, including touchscreen kiosks, software, physical products, IVR phone interfaces, and of course, websites. In addition to her consulting work, Danielle is an adjunct faculty member at Northeastern University. She is a frequent speaker at local, national, and international conferences. She has a BE in biomedical and electrical engineering from Vanderbilt University and an MS in human factors and information design from the Elkin B. McCullum Graduate School of Business at Bentley. In short, she's very smart and she knows her stuff. I know we're all going to learn interesting things today. Danielle, thank you for sharing your knowledge and experience. The virtual podium is yours.
Thanks, Jason. I thought we'd start with just what is UX? Certainly UX stands for user experience, but what does that mean? If you do a Google image search, you might get really scared and then immediately stop and run in the opposite direction. You get a bunch of really complicated Venn diagrams. There's brains involved. There's lots of hexagons, which we'll see some of those later. I'll break those down for you. But it certainly doesn't have to be as complicated as this makes it look. ISO has a definition. They say it is the effectiveness, efficiency, and satisfaction with which specified users achieve specified goals in particular environments. And the takeaway from this one really is that very specific window that they're addressing specific users with specific goals in specific environments. So your UX doesn't necessarily look like everyone else's UX. A lot of people think it's visual design. You know, they see user experience and they say, oh, we're talking about typography, fonts, colors, you know, icon style, things like that. But that's really just a small piece of what UX it fully encompasses. It starts with a foundation of really solid user research upon which you overlay an increasingly specific number of practices like content strategy, information architecture, interaction design, and visual design finally is there at the top. Building a good website really is not at all unlike building a house. So first we have this solid foundation of user research. You don't just grab a board and a hammer and start building a house. And you certainly don't want to just grab a keyboard and an idea and start building a website. First, you really need to understand for the house, who's going to live there? Do those people have any disabilities that need to be accommodated? Am I building a house for a family of 10 or a family of 2? How old are those people and how long are they intending to stay in this house? You know, are we intentionally building a starter home or are we, building someone's forever home? Comparably with the website, we really need to understand who's going to be using that. Again, do they have any disabilities? Which the answer in the website world is nearly always yes. What incomes, ages, and education levels are we designing for? And then why are those people even there? You know, what are their goals and what is keeping them from achieving those goals? For associations, you have a number of different types of end users. Certainly you have your members. They're professionals. They want to be part of a group. They want to improve their own knowledge base, career prospects, increase their sort of sense of legitimacy or credibility in the field. Often you also have consumers who are looking for those practitioners to do things for them, to provide their services. And it's certainly important not to forget your own employees, the people who are working within the website, the people who are servicing those members and consumers have their own internal needs as well. Sometimes you're also addressing the needs of policymakers, lobbying groups or legislators, for example. And then certainly your association's leadership has their own goals. You know, they need to be proud of that website and be able to put it forth as a valuable thing that they have contributed to the professional community. On top of that layer of user research, we move into content strategy. A lot of this is really just the what. What are we going to put in our website? What are we going to put in our house? So for the house, you know, what rooms do we need? What kind of furniture do we have? Do we have 100 small kitchen appliances that maybe we need to build a pantry for? How many cars does the family have? Do they do a lot of biking? You know, what are some things that we need to plan for before we build the shell around it? On the website, this takes the form of features and functions, a lot of video, photos, copy, product reviews if you have them. You think about what kind of pages they need, and then also in this layer is the creation of that content. You know, dealing with who's going to make it, who's going to approve it, who's going to govern whether this is on brand and consistent with our voice and tone and valuable for our end users. The next layer is information architecture. So now that we understand what the website's going to have, we need to understand how to structure that content. So again, in the house, we have, okay, I need 4 bedrooms. Am I just going to stack them next to each other? Probably not exactly, right? I need to think a little bit about how those things are going to be arranged, how people are going to move from one room to the other, and how they're going to be able to see, you know, and do that without stubbing their toes, for example. On the website, this takes the form of navigation structure, individual screen layout. So your sitemap is part of this, and sometimes dealing with your content management system can be part of this as well. So going back to our house metaphor, you can use an eraser on the drafting table or a sledgehammer on the construction site. So what we see here, this is actually the original floor plan for my own home. And before we did any building on the home, we changed a billion things there on the drafting table. We changed something in every room because while this sort of standard template was close, it didn't fully accommodate the way we actually lived our day-to-day lives, right? And certainly your website is going to take that same approach. This case study is from Sargento. You may know them from your grocer's dairy case. They do a lot with your favorite cheeses. And this was to be their very first intranet. And what we did was start with just a sketch and say, hey, this is something that we think is a good idea. How well or poorly does this meet the needs of the end users and the business? And we put that sketch in front of some typical end users and asked them to do some typical things like find HR forms or schedule meetings or look at sales data or production data. And we found some things that needed to be changed. So we evolved that design, again, before anything had been built, when it was really cheap and easy to change a sketch, and turned that into the sort of more detailed wireframe you see there on the right. So we want to do that as many times as we can in a design cycle to make sure we have all that taken care of and thought of. Back to our triangle. The interaction design layer builds on everything we've done so far. So now we're looking at more details, right? Which way should the doors in our house swing? Do we need door knobs, or would we benefit from lever handles on our doors? What types of switches are we going to use, right? In the website, we need to understand what kind of controls are we going to use, right? We've settled on a navigation scheme, a sitemap, if you will, but we haven't specified yet whether that's going to take the form of a top navigation or perhaps a side nav. How are people going to make their selections? What actions are they going to do? Do we want a drop-down box or a set of check boxes? And then things like micro interactions, like when I start with a username, is it already taken? You know, can I find that out in line, or do I have to wait until I press submit to get that information? And finally, we get to the fun part, although I, of course, think the whole thing is fun. But the sexy part, if you will, is that visual design layer. So we get to start picking paint colors and flooring and cabinet finishes and curtains. And on your website, you get to start thinking about your color scheme. Some of that, of course, is going to be dictated by your existing brand guidelines, but those are a little bit malleable as you move forward. Typography, any iconography you're going to use, you know, what sort of visual feel is your website going to have? So taking that same house plan, you see we've chosen some paint colors, right? We're tacking this on at the end. This isn't necessarily the thing you want to pick first. It's not as important, if you will, as having the correct number of rooms in your house. And there's my husband on the right choosing finishes for the kitchen and bathroom. Back to Sargento, this is what those sketches evolved into when the visual design was applied. Very cheesy. So some before and afters for you. This is an intranet from the Navy Federal Credit Union. It's the world's largest credit union. And you can see they've done a lot of things that a lot of other organizations do, right? They start building something, they tack on a few things, they have a bunch of different content creators. They don't necessarily have a consistent governance model for their content. So what you get, it looks kind of Frankenstein-y. It's really tough for people to find the information they're looking for, which translates to help desk calls that are expensive and challenging and demoralizing, certainly for employees who can't do what they want to do. We were able to move this to a more modernized, structured, clear, easy-to-use intranet, and they did see those help desk calls drop dramatically after this launch. A more recent redesign is this one from Ascension. It is a healthcare company. They own a number of hospitals and other health-related businesses across a number of states. And this was their old site of about a year ago. And you can see it was looking a little dated. We had some really dense text over on the right. Not all of the subsidiaries were fully integrated with the site. And it was a fixed presence. So people coming in from mobile devices were not having great experience here. And we were able to, again, evolve this site into something structured, clear, fully incorporating all of the businesses, responsive to be viewable on a number of different devices with a single code base, and really easy for the business to put forth what they needed, as well as for career seekers or employees to get what they needed from this as well. And our last example shows how you can evolve things not just within a design cycle, but across design cycles. So Mercy is another hospital system based here in St. Louis, where we are. And this was their site from about 2012. And you can see they've got this select your community up here in the top orange button. That was something that we found users were very confused by. What does community mean? Well, here, what it means is geographical area, so that they can tell you which doctors and hospitals are closest to where you live or work. But that didn't make sense to the end users. They saw community and thought, well, it's my neighborhood, or it's my church, or it's my kickball league. And so there was a big disconnect there. The site evolved a bit over the next year or two. You can see we've gone to this I want to structure to provide quick access to lots of things. And then they've dropped this community concept where they're replacing it with a geolocation They're automatically detecting your location and then serving up relevant information for those users specifically. That is something you can override if you're at home and you're really looking for doctors close to work, or searching for your parents. That is accommodated as well. It continues to evolve a little bit. We still have that same geolocation. The structure of the nav is a little bit different, and you can see the visual design continues to modernize across these designs from year to year. And if you are interested, they are doing it again later this year, so they're certainly on a mission for continuous improvement. So to summarize then, the positive user experience is built on a strong foundation of user research, upon which we overlay content strategy, information architecture, interaction design, and then finally visual design. So fabulous, Danielle, thank you. How do we make sure that we have all those things and people have good experiences with our association website? The current best practice for this is called design thinking. It came out of Stanford a few years ago, and the process there is to empathize, define, ideate, prototype, and test. And then you cycle through that ideate, prototype, test as many times as your timeline and budget will allow. Now this will seem familiar to the triangle model, right? Mostly we see empathize and define here, where the user research helps us empathize with those end users and their needs and their pain points. Content strategy and IA are some definition steps. As you move more toward the top of the triangle, you're doing that cyclical prototyping and testing and ideation. So it's just more of a how compared to the what. For that first empathize step, there are a number of techniques that you can use to understand where your end users are coming from, whether they're members, whether they're your staff, whether they are your policymakers. You can do things like contextual inquiry, where you go to where they live or work, where are they when they're accessing your website, and understand what's going on. Are they distracted? Is it a loud environment? Is it a bright environment? What are they trying to accomplish right then? Field studies further help to understand the bigger picture of what they're trying to do. Sometimes you can just shadow those people for a day and really get to understand what they're going for and what they need your website to help them do. Immersion studies are similar and last even longer. You can, if you're looking for something over a longer period of time, like months, weeks or months, where you can't realistically shadow them or study them, you can ask them to participate in journaling studies, where based on a trigger, either a specific time or a specific event, they send you an email or a text message that says, I was trying to do this, and your website did this, and it was good or it was bad, and I feel, happy, sad, frustrated, empowered, any of those things. And over time, you can get a better picture of what your users are really thinking and doing. Journey mapping covers the entire user experience from start to finish, and where we go through and see, how are those users feeling at each point, and what that helps us do is identify where to allocate the most resources to improve the experience. If people are having a really good time signing up for membership, but are having a lot of trouble finding your monthly meeting or monthly chapter meetings, then you need to focus on that chapter meeting piece. Empathy maps, that's that image right there in the second, where you just sit there and think, talk to your end users, and understand more fully, what are they seeing, what are they hearing, what are they thinking and feeling, what do they do, and what are they trying to do, and what's standing in their way. Surveys are commonly used, but do not typically provide a lot of value. And survey design could be like a 3-webinar series or, a graduate degree if you're really interested in that. But they don't tend to provide as much value as these other techniques. And you can do these things at your annual meeting. I certainly know a lot of organizations who do that. That's where your end users tend to be, at least at that point in the year. And it's easy to grab a couple of them and say, hey, help me understand what you're going through when you do this. And you can do small studies, you can do feature prioritization exercises, you can do quick usability studies of prototypes of your website, all at your annual meeting. The next step in the design thinking process is define. So really specify, what we're going to do to solve those problems we learned about in the empathize stage. You can develop personas that come out of that user research that you did. Here's one for Maggie. She is a membership manager. And we understand the point of a persona is really to keep that end user top of mind. It's very easy to do this research and then put it in a drawer and forget about it and move on with design and development and rarely think about that end user again. But really, we want to think about them every time we reach a decision point in design or development or feature prioritization to ask ourselves, would this help Maggie? How would Maggie feel about this? What do we need to do to make Maggie's life easier? Also, we can do some things like card sorting and tree testing. These are information architecture activities to help form or validate your nav structure. So you can throw out a hypothetical hierarchy and ask people, where would you go to find the dates of next year's annual meeting? And they navigate through that tree and say, I think I would find it here. And what we see is whether more people were or were not able to do that quickly and accurately. And if they were not, that's the sign that we need to adjust that information architecture to be more user-friendly. Ideating is really fun in the design thinking process. Most people are familiar with traditional brainstorming. More and more, it is being phased out in favor of newer techniques like mind mapping or 6-3-5 brainwriting. In 6-3-5 brainwriting, you have 6 people who generate 3 ideas in 5 minutes. And then they write them down on a piece of paper. They pass that piece of paper to the person next to them after that 5 minutes. And they spend the next 5 minutes thinking of 3 more ideas triggered by the ideas from the person before them, by the ideas that are on that paper. So what that helps you do is avoid sort of the groupthink that comes with traditional brainstorming and the risk of having the quiet, brilliant person in the corner who's getting talked over all the time. Thinking on your own and then sharing tends to generate more and better ideas. There's another technique called Design Studio, in which you get all of the stakeholders into a room together and quickly iterate on page designs for your website or application. And if all the stakeholders are in there, they quickly are able to generate ideas, sketch them out, get feedback from within the room, generate more ideas, sketch them out, until at the end of the day, the group has converged on a single design direction, and you can move forward confidently in that design direction with the knowledge that all the stakeholders who were in that room have understood the process and how you got to where you are, and you don't end up getting questioned later about, why don't we start over and do something completely different? It's a really fun technique. I recommend it to anyone who has the opportunity to do it. Moving on to prototyping. This can take many, many forms. So for websites, which we're talking about today, this starts with sketching. You saw the sketch earlier of the Sargento intranet. And there are a number of paper prototyping techniques that can also be used to simulate the way a website might look or behave. Modeling for more physical products. And we see there in the center, that's the prototype for the very first Palm Pilot. And the inventor of the Palm Pilot would carry that around in his shirt pocket. And every time he happened to come across a situation where he thought, oh, I should be able to use my hypothetical future Palm Pilot device to help me here, he would take that out of his pocket and tap on it with a pencil instead of a stylus and get an idea of what did he need to tweak about the design to make it work better. As we move up in the level of fidelity of our prototype, we get to wireframing, which is more detailed and a little bit cleaner than the sketches It takes a little more time than sketching, of course, so you want to get your sketching in first. And then you can move on to interactive prototyping with tools like Axure, iRise, and Balsamiq. These different levels of prototypes teach you different things about your interface and what works and doesn't about them. Sketching and wireframing will help you a lot with page layout, navigation, things like that, but it's not going to tell you whether your individual widgets are working well or serving your users well. That's where the interactive prototyping starts to add value. And then finally, we want to test those ideas we had and prototyped. Usability testing can take a number of forms as well. There is traditional in-lab moderated testing where you bring in a representative user to a lab-like environment and a moderator sits with them while they use the prototype or alpha or beta or live site to perform a series of representative tasks. And the moderator observes how well or poorly they are able to complete those tasks and how frustrated they get in the process. We can also do the same thing in the field where you go through the same process, but perhaps you go to the end user's home or place of work. There are also remote moderated sessions. These are typically GoToMeeting or Skype sessions, again with a moderator and a single participant. And then there are unmoderated techniques where there's just a web application that prompts the end user to complete a task, records their screen while they do it, and then prompts them for text-based feedback. So it just depends on your goals and the state of your project and your timeline and budget to determine which one of these techniques is the most appropriate for you. Great. So why do we do this? Well, we do it because it increases your bottom line. It's good for your business. How? First of all, it's going to increase your revenue. One study from a few years ago said the average business metrics improvement after a usability redesign was 83%. So that's straight up KPIs like conversion rates, traffic, performance, and then usage of those target features that the organization felt were strategically important. This is a great example. This is a case study from Expedia, and the only difference there between variant A and variant B is that company name field. And when they removed the company name field, Expedia saw revenues jump up $12 million in the first year. Why were people getting so thrown by company name? Well, even though it's not a required field, as you may notice, it is a field that people were filling out anyway, even if they were traveling for personal reasons and not business reasons. And then when they went to enter their personal credit card information and people tried to resolve that with company name, or maybe they saw company name and then they saw address and they entered their company's address, it just caused some confusion, $12 million worth as it turns out, and removing that field was a big revenue generator for Expedia. Even better is this one from an e-commerce site that has not been identified officially, but the case study is linked there in the footer. When you have filled your shopping cart and you're ready to check out and you're presented with these options, you have some choices, right? You can use your email address and try to use your password. If you know you were an existing customer, maybe you've forgotten your password and you have to go through a password recovery process. Maybe you aren't really all that interested in becoming a registered user. You just want to buy what's in your shopping cart. But there are a lot of reasons why you might not be able to just smoothly log into a site and complete your purchase, or not want to register for a site and complete your purchase. This company was able to identify that they were losing a lot of customers on this screen and added this checkout as guest option and saw their revenues increase by $300 million in a year. Now that was a small percentage of the company's annual revenue, but certainly a valuable one. The second way this increases your bottom line is by decreasing your development and support costs. So a lot of development time is actually redevelopment time, And you can avoid that if you move forward confidently in a single design direction that has been validated from the beginning. And then the support costs we talked about earlier, cutting call center traffic, which is very, very expensive. This is a case study from earlier in my career. Pfizer had acquired a bunch of smaller pharmaceutical companies from around the world and was trying to shorten the pipeline from drug discovery, to actual clinical launch. And part of that was making sure those different scientists at the different facilities weren't reinventing the wheel. If someone in St. Louis had already done some work with a chemical, maybe someone up in Connecticut could just look at that research instead of repeating the experiment. So we took an iterative, user-centered approach to designing this website. We were able to go through 4 iterations of prototyping and testing with this tool, along with some other checkpoints, smaller checkpoints with the end user community. And then when it launched, the project manager actually got an angry phone call from the help desk manager who was irate because he had trained all of his staff on the ins and outs of this tool, and all they were getting was password reset requests because it was so intuitive. They did not need that help desk assistance to figure out how to use the tool. Another case study is from a company called MediConnect. They decided to take a paper-based medical coding process and replace it with a technical process, a digital process. And so they examined the existing workflow, how are people doing this work now, and they found a lot of inefficiencies there. And so then they went off and designed and developed a solution, a very robust, exhaustive solution with highlighting in any color you wanted and stamps in any font you wanted, and another number of other features that they thought would be valuable for that user community. Well, in the end, the users used it for about a day or two and then promptly stopped using the tool and went back to their paper process, which if there ever is a technology failure indicator, it is that people are choosing paper over your technology. So the CEO said our next move was the smartest move we could have made. We asked our customers why they weren't using it. To which I say that is the second smartest move you could have made. The smartest move would have been talking to the customers and the end users before they invested all that time and money in developing a tool that was really too much, as it turned out, for those users. They wanted a post-it tool, a stamp tool, and a highlighting tool. They didn't want to have the burden of choice of all those different things. The third way this increases your bottom line is by improving your employees' efficiency. So right now, an average membership manager in the United States has a salary of about $66,000, and the average task success rate for an intranet is 74%. So you're taking 26% of their intranet time and basically paying them to not find things. So if we can improve that intranet task success rate by providing an intuitive experience and findable content, it certainly is better for the organization overall. Your employees are being paid to do their jobs instead of flounder on the intranet. Increased word-of-mouth marketing is another way this increases your bottom line. A thrilled customer is the most potent marketing asset your organization can leverage. This is absolutely true. And if you think about the last time you made a major purchase, or really any purchase, without some sort of feedback from friends or family, you might come up a bit short. Word-of-mouth marketing is responsible for $6 trillion of annual consumer spending. And a word-of-mouth impression drives at least 5 times more sales than a paid impression. The example here is the Weber Rapid Fire Chimney Starter, which is the highest rated product on Amazon.com. And I would love for anyone who has one to say something about it in the chat box. Every time I talk about this product, there's someone in the audience who says, I have that, and it is awesome, and I love it, and I used it last week, and they really can't stop talking about this chimney starter. That's what you want people to do and say about your website. By contrast, this is my activity tracker, your Fitbit, if you will, a competitor to Fitbit. And when people ask me about it, I say, well, you know, it's good. See, it has 4 stars there on Amazon compared to 5 for the chimney starter. So it's not that it's a bad product, but the difference between someone saying, oh my God, I have to have that, and, well, you know, it does its job, is really the difference between good and great. And your website certainly could be great. Customer experience also differentiates you from your competitors. I know that my industry has a number of associations that service practitioners in my field, and there is certainly a lot that I think about when I'm choosing whether to participate in events with one or another. By 2020, we're expecting customer experience to overtake price as the key brand differentiator from one organization to another, or one business to another. And by 2016, this year, we're looking at that being 89% of companies competing primarily on the basis of customer experience. And then finally, in the end, it's just the right thing to do. Everybody's going through something. Everybody's stressed out. We're all too busy. And people will forget what you said, right? What does your copy say? What photo do you have? Did you have a good annual meeting that year? But they will never forget how you made them feel. When they go to your website, do they feel empowered or do they feel frustrated? And that's really going to be the difference between them recommending you to their friends and colleagues and not. So think a minute about those users, right? Can my members easily locate annual meeting information? Is it easy for them to sign up for a newsletter or register for different events? What about consumers? How easy or difficult is it for them to find a member of your organization to provide services to them? Can your employees find the information that is relevant to them quickly and efficiently? Can legislators find and easily digest your policy positions? Can they understand what you're talking about? And can they take that away and use it in their legislative efforts? And then finally, is your leadership proud of that web presence? Can they go out and say, yes, I'm the head of this organization, let me show you? So to sum up, a user-centered approach to digital product design and development will increase your sales, save you development time, reduce your support costs, increase your word-of-mouth marketing, differentiate you from your competitors, and hopefully make people feel empowered and productive in the world. So just a quick summary, we talked about the triangle, we talked about the design thinking process, and we talked about some of the why there that's going to benefit your organization. And I look forward to your questions at the end, but for now I'll turn it over to Jason.
Thank you, Danielle. We really appreciate you sharing. Very quickly, everyone, before I open the floor to the questions that have come in, I want to quickly connect the dots from what Danielle has just shared to what we do here at Engage. If Danielle's your architect, then Engage would be your builder. For those of you less familiar with the company, we're a Midwestern-based company. All of our staff, our designers, and our developers are here in St. Louis, right in this office with me. Our services are targeted to Microsoft-centric clients and include analytics, design, CMS, AMS, and CRM integration. Plus, we offer custom software development. We have a very strong track record for creating successful association websites, and in the past 3 years, we've launched more than 20, and just two weeks ago, 5 of our clients took home ProTech Wow Awards at the 2016 Fusion Conference. I'm also very pleased to share that our client, the American College of Rheumatology, won the 2016 ASAE Gold Circle Award for their website, rheumatology.org. We are very, very proud of that accolade. Here are some of the other folks whose sites we've launched in the past few years. In your lower left-hand corner, SOCMA just launched theirs Monday. So I think SOCMA is attending the webinar. Congratulations to that team. And again, tying it back to Danielle's presentation, this is how an Engage project workflow looks in a logo format. We approach your website by building on this process, and that process is discovery, design and develop, then deploy. And you'll notice that the first three circles, discovery, design, develop, deliver, and deploy, are circled with a bold line with arrows. And that's because it's an iterative approach, just like Danielle spoke to. We're going to have you explain what you're looking for. We're going to develop that, and then we're going to let you use it. And once you've interacted with it, if you find that now that you've played with it, it doesn't quite meet your needs, we'll start the process over again. And once we've gotten through each piece of the site, we now move on to the user base, and we delight them with the results for your new website. And then we look at the data after about a month of usage by your member base to see if it tells us anything that we've overlooked or if there's opportunities or low-hanging fruit coming through in the Google Analytics. So, an example of a site using Danielle's approaches is NFT. Again, is another participant in today's call. Hello, NFDA, and thank you for letting us use your website. On the left, you'll see NFD's original website. They went through a persona process to develop personas for the different people that would be using the site, as well as a wireframe that is shown here to give us the new site, which is launched on the right. And using that wireframe gave NFDA an opportunity to look in prototype format before we got too far into the design approach. And I will say they've launched about a month ago. They've since moved on into the data stage, and early look at the numbers look very good. And now we're beginning to look at what will come next as we begin the life cycle all over again. Okay, that's all the talking we're going to do. So now let's open it up to Q&A. It looks like we have several questions. David from DC, what does a UX project typically cost? Oh, so Danielle, I think that one's for you.
Thanks, David. So a lot of UXers like to say it depends, because everything is really specific to a single organization or a specific project. The range of UX activities can vary quite a bit, from the very affordable in the even hundreds or low thousands of dollars to full-blown redesign efforts for massive organizations that cost a lot more. But for the most part, these are very affordable and well within the return that you get on that investment.
Okay. I think we got another one for you, Danielle. This is Anna from Baltimore. If you had one piece of advice regarding UX, what would that be?
Ooh, good one. So one piece of advice would be to start early. This is not something you can tack on at the end. It's something that has to be considered from the beginning to be maximally successful. So you don't want to call your UX practitioner 2 weeks before you launch and say, hey, what can we fix? You need to call them at the beginning of that process so that they can do all the good user-centered iterative approach to design before you've spent all of your budget and timeline.
Okay. Then we have Jesse again from DC. If we have an in-house graphic artist, can you work with them on developing a new site? Okay, so that's one for me. Yes, the answer is yes. We can work with your in-house design staff, or if you have an outside agency, we'd be happy to work with them as well. We frequently work with ad agencies as their technical arm. They tend to have sort of light level of technical experience, so we'll come in with a level of depth and bring that to the project. So yes, if that's your scenario, we'd be happy to help. Okay, another one for Engage. Do you have the means to incorporate our AMS system into a website? And in short, the answer is yes. I always want to know which system, but our history is a custom software development firm, so back-end development is a core strength of ours. And so the answer is yes. Give me a call and we'll talk about exactly which one. Okay. That's it for questions. I think we need to move on at this point. Please don't forget the survey. Remember, you have a chance to win a $25 gift card and an opportunity to tell us and suggest future presentations. Speaking of future presentations, our next webinar has already been scheduled for August 18th. The presenter will be Gail Strauss, and she will be speaking to the subject of growing millennial memberships. So please save the date. Rest assured, we will send you a reminder and an invite, and hope to see you at that presentation as well. Thank you everyone for attending. Danielle and I would both like to be of further value if we can. So here's our contact information. If you have any additional questions, please feel free to contact us at any of the ways shown on the screen. And we appreciate your attendance. Danielle, thank you so much for presenting.
Thank you.